Calafiori to Arsenal. Here we go. Now, I have to admit something. This might be the signing of the season. This might even be a title-winning signing. The difference. Signing a player that gives Arsenal that edge to win the Premier League trophy that they've been chasing for years. Why? It's just because of the positive impact this player can have on this Arsenal team, on this Arsenal setup, and most importantly, I think he can unlock one special player in this Arsenal team. Now, in this video, we will cover it all. So if you're new, make sure to subscribe, make sure to hit the like, make sure to let me know what you think in the comments. Let's get into it. Okay, let's talk some football. How good is Riccardo Calafiori? Now, this is a player where it didn't really work out for him at Roma under Jose Mourinho. Went on loan to Genoa, didn't really work out. Switzerland, Basel. That's where his name began to pick up. People started asking themselves that question. Who is he? Because he's good. Thiago Motta signs him for Bologna. Now, this is where the magic started, and this is the main reason why Arsenal have paid a good amount of money for his services. Now, these are just some generic stats of how he performed last year at Bologna. We're talking the most aerial duels in that entire team. Bearing in mind, he didn't play every single game for Bologna. Aerial duels, 60. The most in the whole team. Interceptions, 50. You have to be one smart player to be able to read the game well, to know when to push, when to sit back, and when to engage. Interceptions are a standout trait in Calafiori's overall game. Now we're talking possession one. The most at Bologna. Over 190. And the most impressive one for a defender. The most assists. He gets involved in the final third, but most importantly, he is one efficient player in the final third. Now, like I said, those are more generic stats. Now, the one thing that I want to do before I dive into the second half of it is let's just compare Arsenal and Bologna. So last season, when we're talking clean sheets, Arsenal 18, Bologna 17. Now, let's look at average possession. Why? Because ball retention, possession is a form of defense. If you have the ball, the opposition can't trouble you. Arsenal averaged 58.4%. Bologna averaged 58.4%. Let's just talk about the amount of goals they conceded, just as a last fancy one. Arsenal conceded 29 goals. Bologna conceded 32 goals. So what does that tell you? Even though they might play different types of football on the ball, off the ball, they're equally as good defensively, and they're equally as good on the ball in terms of retaining it. Now let's look at part two. Part two. Now that we've compared Arsenal and Bologna, and we're in agreement, defensively, they're equally as good, and ball retention-wise, they're equally as good. Let's compare Calafiori to two centre-halves, in my opinion, two of the best in the Premier League. Gabriel and Saliba. Now, if we're talking just tackles, interceptions, William Saliba last year, 70. Gabriel, 79. Calafiori, 103. Now, the reason why I compared Arsenal and Bologna is because, of course, if you play for a team that defends the majority of the season, a team in the bottom half that doesn't have much of the ball, of course, your defensive numbers will look good. But that's because of the football that your team plays. But we compared Arsenal and Bologna. And when it came to clean sheets, when it came to average possession, they were equally as good. So when you look at these numbers, it paints a wider picture as to how good he is defensively. Cool. Now let's talk about how good he is on the ball. Progressive carries, passes in the final third. Saliba last year, 22. Gabriel, 21. Calafiori, 51. 51. That's more than Gabriel and Saliba combined. What does that tell you? about how efficient and how effective he is on the ball in two forms of progression: progressive passes, progressive carries. Now, this is why, in my opinion, I think he is Arteta's secret weapon. And why, in my opinion, he might be the difference. He might be the player that edges Arsenal towards the Premier League title. Why? Now listen, when you're a good team, the opposition fear you. You earn that over time. If you're a good team, you start playing against teams that sit back because they fear you. They know how good you are on the ball. Manchester City, I think every single game of the season for them, they play against teams that park the bus and sit back. Arsenal have now become one of those teams. The opposition fear them. The opposition will sit back against them. Why Calafiori is a cheat code? Because of what I just showed you. Those progressive carries and those progressive passes for a defensive player are ridiculously good. They might be some of the best because it shows you, even as a defender, where his primary purpose is to defend, he can offer something in the final third. So that's one extra player that the opposition have to worry about. And the opposition can't man mark everybody. Now, Arsenal come up against one too many low blocks. They're always coming up against low blocks. And like I said, it's something you earn over time because of how good you are. But the problem is, so many teams struggle against low blocks. Why? Because it's compact. There's no time. There's no space. A lot of your players are man marked, taken out of the game. Just look at these clips. When I say title clinching signing, when I say title winning signing, imagine having a defender that's this good on the ball, under pressure, more than happy to break lines with either his passing or his ball carrying. If you carry the ball and you take it to the opposition, every single player that you beat, you've taken them out of the game. The more players you take out of the game, the more time and space you create for yourself and for your teammates. And the beauty in it is, the more you take out, the more you force the opposition to move. Because now they've got more space that they need to cover. But they have fewer bodies. And that's what I mean when I say you create time for yourself, you create time for your teammates, but most importantly, you create space. This is a title winning signing because of this one ability. Now, let's compare another jewel. Let's compare another stat. How good is he in the air? The Premier League is relatively physical. A lot of teams like to play long. A lot of teams rely on set pieces. Aerial duels. William Saliba, 59.5% last year. Gabriel, 55.4% last year. Calafiori, 71.4%. 71.4%. Now you're probably looking at the numbers and thinking, he didn't go into that many duels in comparison to Gabriel and Saliba, which is true. But at the end of the day, the best of centre-halves, the best of players, know when to go in to aerial duels, to ground duels. Whenever I've watched Calafiori, and there's no surprise, I did mention earlier, when it comes to interceptions, when it comes to reading of the game, knowing when to push, knowing when to sit, knowing when to engage, he might be one of the best. His reading of the game is very impressive. And at the end of the day, he's Italian. Italians have mastered the art of defending. It's in their blood. Now the final part. The most exciting part. The part that everybody's been waiting for. Who is this one player that he is going to unlock? Who? Remontada season for Gabriel Martinelli. Now last year, he fell off a cliff. It was embarrassing watching him at times. He just wasn't the same player of the season before. The player that scored just under 20 Premier League goals. One of the most efficient and clinical wide players of that season was far from it. He looked like a quarter of the player last year. Why? I mainly blame it on a tactical change. And that tactical change forced his confidence to go down. Eventually, he was out of the window. And next thing you know, he was out of the team. Why? When you look at Martinelli last year, he was utilised as a touchline winger. Not the same way he was utilised the year before. The year before, he played closer to goal. You look at his average position, his average touches, where they were on the pitch. Now compare them to last year. Last year, he was hugging the flanks. He was stretching the pitch out to create space for his teammates. But out wide, he was not that efficient. He was not effective. He struggled when it came to him against two of the opposition players. He needs to play closer to goal. Now, why did he struggle last year? You look at Arsenal's setup last year. Now, when you've got Zinchenko that likes to tuck into midfield, when you've got Alejandro Trossard, who at times was part of the midfield three, beginning of the season, Kai Havertz also played in that midfield three. All three of those players, they have so many things in common that do not suit a player like Martinelli. Number one, they all like the ball to feet. Players that like the ball to feet do not move around as much. So we're talking no underlaps, no overlaps. Martinelli struggled with that. Secondly, they were occupying positions / zones that Martinelli had occupied the year before. But they weren't as efficient as him. So how does Calafiori solve this problem? How? You've now signed a guy that can play as a left back, a guy that can stretch the pitch out, a guy that wants responsibility of playing out wide, hugging the flanks. And if there's now somebody hugging the flanks, what does that mean? Martinelli can tuck inside. Martinelli can go back to playing as that inside forward because there's somebody hugging the flanks in Calafiori. And now Calafiori will bring all of that technical, all of that physical ability, all of that efficiency in the final third. Now, this is how I think Arsenal will set up. Calafiori will be hugging the flanks. Martinelli tucks inside, goes back to his inside forward of days. And I'll tell you for free, the goals will start coming. Now, the beauty in this setup is the key to modern football is versatility. Versatility is the key to the modern day football. It allows you to play in a variety of different ways. It opens so many different doors. You can utilize players in different areas and different zones. You keep the opposition thinking, and the opposition do not want to think when they're defending. You look at it. You can rotate it in so many different ways and it will work. We're talking Thomas Partey can drop back and allow Ben White to tuck into midfield. Ben White has a very nice relationship with Odegaard and Bukayo Saka. Simple rotations. That's what makes Arsenal unpredictable, but it makes Arsenal one of the worst teams to come up against. And on top of everything, that left-hand side for Arsenal is going to have technical ability. It's going to have physicality. It's going to have players that are effective, clinical in the final third. Calafiori will unlock a different side to this Arsenal team. And listen, if he has to play as part of a back three, he can do it. He done it at Basel. He done it at Bologna at times. If he has to play as a traditional out and out left back, hug the flank, put crosses into the box, he can do it. If he has to invert and play part of midfield, we're talking cash money with that ball playing ability, with that ball carrying, with those progressive passes, with that ball striking, which I haven't really touched on. Arsenal and Arteta have themselves a secret weapon. But anyways, if you're new, make sure to hit the like, make sure to subscribe, make sure to let me know what you think in the comments, and I'll catch you guys on another one.